What's up, Dragon Brood? So, we're going to take a look today at a Boros Warriors list. And this is going to look a little bit different, but we did get a whole lot of Warriors released to us with Zendikar Rising, and that actually opens up the doors for some new things we want to try. And we finally get to play with some reasonable equipment cards. Well, other than Embercleave, because we all know Embercleave's been good. But this gives us an excuse to look at some of the others, especially some that are coming out with Zendikar Rising. But before we take a look at it, as always, you know I'm going to ask, if you haven't, please like this video to help us get seen by more people. Hit that subscription button just so I know that you appreciate what I'm doing. And then hit the notification bell so you get notified every time I have a video up, especially right now, as there's going to be multiple videos a day with new deck info coming out as we get to the release of Zendikar Rising. But for now, let's go take a look at that Boros Warriors list. Okay, we're going to start at the top here with Resolute Strike. And this card, it's a 1 mana instant, 1 white. Target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. It's a warrior. If it's a warrior, you may attach an equipment to it you control. Honestly, I was trying to find a way to get 3 or even 4 of these into the list, which I still might in the final version, because in all reality, this card could end up being a blowout. I mean, when we get through the list and you see some of the other cards in here, we'll come back to this card and talk about why it has potential to be very important to this type of deck. Now, the one cheap equipment that's existed is the Shadow Spear. It's cheap to cast at 1 mana, it's cheap to equip at 2 mana. And you have some stuff like Fervent Champ right here below it that actually get to equip for free effectively. It makes your stuff cost 3 less colorless. It's only 2 colorless, so you get a free equip, which is pretty nice. Now, I will admit, yes, we said this is a warrior list, and Fervent Champ is hanging out in here. Obviously not a warrior. However, it does first strike, which is great, especially when you put the equipment on it. But it also can equip for basically free or very cheap for the various equipment we're going to put in this list. So it kind of gets to be an honorary warrior for the sake of this deck list, and it gets done what we want to do. We're playing 3 Fireblade Charger, and really this might need to go up to 4 charges on here as we kind of play around with the numbers and figure it out. So honestly, right now I would say the final version could potentially have more chargers and potentially could have more Righteous Strike. So just keep an eye on that. But anyway, the Charger being 1 red, 1/1, has haste if it's equipped, which makes a difference. And when it dies, you get to deal that much damage to the opponent or to a target equal to this creature's power. This is a big deal. You know, when you're able to put an equipment on it, make it a 3 or 4 power, that really makes a difference for when your opponent decides to kill it or sweep the board, or if you want to block something and kill it to be able to take out a bigger creature. Like, it has a lot of stuff going on for it that's very positive for this type of list, and it's cheap, so it almost guarantees you're going to hit a 1 mana creature on those first couple of turns and get rolling. We're playing Seasoned Hollowblade, which this card is just good. It's hard to kill. It's a 3 power, 2 mana creature. Just getting the indestructible is so nice. And once it's equipped and you're able to get it to a 5 or a 6 power with multiple things, like, there's a lot of stuff you're going to be able to do with this card. I mean, you're going to be able to build a board out of this deck as we go along that just is going to be stuff that's hard to deal with. And I think that's the biggest benefit to this list. Core Blade Master. We are playing 4 of these. Don't know if it needs to be a 4 of, but it does double strike on its own. And since you kind of get to equip for free or cheap with some of the equipment we're going to be playing, it's pretty nice. And any of your other warriors that are equipped also get double strike. Also a big benefit, especially if, say, you're able to play one of the bigger equipments like the Maul you see over there to the right. You get to play that turn 3 maybe onto something, and then you play this the following turn. Like, you could very well be attacking your opponent for 10 or 15 right then. Like, that's a pretty big deal. Kargan Intimidator. This is a card that, if you hadn't seen it, maybe I'll link it. I don't know. We'll see if I remember. But this is a card I got to preview on the channel here. Big fan of this card. It can basically force your opponent to have to leave 2 blockers back, because you can make it where a coward can't block a warrior and all your creatures are warriors. So that's a big deal. You can pump a warrior. Again, when you have something that has double strike, even a +1 is now like +2 in some cases. I mean, there's just a lot of cool things going on with this card in this type of list. I am a very big fan of it. The third ability of giving something trample may not get used that often, but it could if your opponent's trying to chump block, so who knows. maybe it's possible all 3 of the abilities turn out working. Shijiri's Shelter, I believe we had this on another list yesterday, maybe the day before. I don't know, we're putting out a lot of deck lists. I'm losing track of the order. But this is a card I'm going to end up in a few lists because it does give a creature protection from a color, which protects you from spot removal, but it also has a land on the backside, so you can skimp on lands a little bit and give yourself an option to still not miss land drops. And the cool part about this deck is, as you can see already, we have so many things that are 1 and 2 that if you have to put a land into play tapped on turn 1 or turn 3 or whatever, it's not going to really hurt your progress very much in building your board state. Shatterskull Smashing, we're playing 2 of these. You can pay 3 life, have it come into play untapped as a red mana source. It does get to do some incidental damage, which won't be irrelevant to this type of list, because sometimes, you know, like we're talking about, when you have the Kargan Intimidator, your opponent leaves maybe 2 creatures back, so they'll be able to block. You might just want to go ahead and pay 4 to deal 2 to something, get it out of the way, then, you know, make your thing unblockable with the next thing from the Intimidator. Akiri Fearless Voyager. This is the card I'm kind of unsure of how important it is to the list. But it's a colorless, red-white, 3/3. Whenever you attack a player with... Well, yeah, whenever you attack... I almost read that wrong. Whenever you attack a player with 1 or more equipped creatures, you draw a card. That's a really good thing, because you don't have really many ways to find extra cards in the list. So that's cool. But you can pay 1 white. You can unattach an equipment card from a creature to give it indestructible. And this is big too in this type of list when you have things that equip cheaply, or you have creatures like the Fervent Champ that can equip for basically free. Like, so you can protect a creature and then immediately be equipped back up again next turn. And be drawing a card for doing it. You know, and that's not something to just be overlooked. That's a real thing. Then we're going to hop over to Kargan War Leader. This is just plain and simple 3 mana, 3/3, pump all your other warriors. And since everything in the deck is a warrior except for Fervent Champion, that's a big boost across the board that is pretty obvious, so we're going to go ahead and play 4 of those. Now, the new equipment we're going to play is Maul of the Skyclaves. This is exciting because, like all the new equipment, it does come into play and equip for free. So you're basically paying 3 to get +2/+2 flying and first strike, no matter what, for a turn. Now, the downside is it does have a 4 mana equip cost, 2 white, well, and it's only double white if you end up putting it on something like a Fervent Champ, which again is a big deal, but it just gains first strike, but it would gain flying, so can't really be too down on that. Also, think about some of the turn sequences you can have with this deck. You could have like a turn 1 Fervent Champ or Charger, turn 2 something like a Hollow Blade potentially, turn 3 maybe Sky Maul, I guess we'll call it that because I love the name. But you put the Sky Maul on Seasoned Hollow Blade, attack for 5, maybe not with your turn 1 creature depending on what's on the ground. Then you play the Core Blade Master that gives it double strike. Now you're attacking for 10. I mean, your opponent's close to dead already. You know, like, that's how quick this deck's going to be able to turn things around. So, and that's not an unreal sequence. You know, even turn 1 creature, turn 2 creature into the Kargan War Leader could be a thing. Or creature into Akiri, next turn equip, attack, draw cards. You know, like, there's so many sequences of different things that could be very good here. We are playing a couple of copies of Nahiri. I wanted to go more, but truthfully, just not a lot of room. I want to be able to keep being aggressive. The good new thing about Nahiri is that you can make extra warriors. So, you know, if you have a war leader or whatever, you're basically making 2/2s, which is pretty sweet. You can also go ahead and try to find equipment, you know, and maybe you want to go find an Embercleave. Maybe you need to come over the top and go find the Sky Maul. You can totally do that. So leaves your options open to be able to do 2 or 3 different things. And then maybe the ultimate matters. I wouldn't say totally, but, you know, being able to do 2, 3, 4 damage might be something. I have no idea how strong that's going to be, but it's not going to be irrelevant. I mean, there will be times Nahiri's able to have just the finishing damage, so keep that in mind as well. And then the last 2 cards, we've got Embercleaves here that we're playing 3 copies. Maybe it should be 4 because of the theme of the deck, but I think because we have the Sky Maul and the Shadow Spear, we don't necessarily need the Embercleave as much. And we're playing 2 of the Amaria's thing just because it comes into play untapped, and you can use it as a plains that way. So it gives you a little bit of wiggle room in your mana, which is nice because we found a way to play only 16 lands, which sounds insane. But again, don't panic because if you're looking at these, you're like, okay, 16, this is 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, in theory. So you do have access to 23 lands, and you really only have like Nahiri, Embercleave, and I guess if we count the Shatterskull Smashing as being things that cost any real mana, everything else is 1s and 2s, except for the later turns, you have 7 things that cost 3. So, actually, I guess 10 things technically, you do have them all of the Skyclaves. So, you know, it's reasonable. You know, it's maybe we could use 1 more mana, but I don't feel upset trying to go the route that we're going. Now, I will say this too, when we're talking again about the Resolute Strike, this card stands to be very good. If you look now that we've kind of seen the whole creature setup of the list, there's going to be a lot of times where you attack with maybe a 3 power thing, or maybe 4, and you're like, okay, cool, now it's +2/+2, and we get to move over either the Embercleave or the Sky Maul or whatever, and it's like boom, 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 now you're up to speed quick, right? So you could go from doing 3 damage to doing 6 or 8 really, really fast with just 1 mana. So, or taking down a big creature. That's the other thing, you know, especially if you're able to move over the Maul, have something with first strike, you know, and take down a creature kind of as a surprise when the opponent's not expecting it. And it's another way that lets your little creatures still fight up the ladder. You know, even if it's not putting an equipment on, just getting +2/+2 could be very good. Enough that we have to really consider, like, do we have to get to trim like a Shajiri Shelter? Or do we trim like a Kargan Intimidator maybe, you know, to find room for that extra Resolute Strike? Maybe, maybe not. It's one of those things that we have to play with it a little bit before we make that decision. But again, talking about the lands, again, I'm trying to just play with 1 Fable Passage just to see kind of how we feel about it. If we care when it comes up, does it affect our mana? We did get lucky. This list does have a pathway it can play. It's got white on one side, red on the other. So that works perfectly. I'm not sure if we want 4 temples because of the other tap lands potentially. This could be a little slow for what we want, but we're at least going to give it a shot. We are playing significantly more plains or mountains than we are plains because our 1-drops happen to be all red and we want to be able to hit those more often. But that's it. That's the deck. If you like Boros aggressive decks, this one should be right up your alley. It plays differently. It makes use of a lot of the new cards. And it looks like a whole lot of fun. Honestly, the amount of damage it can do could be very big. So this is one of the ones I've built that I actually am excited to play. Because on paper, it looks really cool. It looks different. I don't know how it's actually going to play at all, though. So it's always fun walking in going, man, this looks awesome, but how is it actually going to work? And like I said, don't worry about requesting a whole bunch of decks. We have plenty coming. So I know a bunch of you are saying, but I want to see this and put this together. There are going to be a lot over the next 5 days that you're going to see here on the channel. So be sure to lock that in. And you can do that by liking this video to help us out, to get more people to see it, hitting that subscription button to help me out, and then hitting that notification bell so that you get notified whenever we have deck lists up and available, because there's going to be a lot every day leading up to the release of Zendikar Rising. But that's all I have for you for now. We'll see you next time.